Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Roots Podcast. I am your host, Sean Pitcher. We have on Carl Bombardier, a.k.a. the Hydro King. Actually, he's the Director of Performance Nutrition at the Arizona Coyotes. I thought I'd throw that in there. We were joking about that earlier before we popped on. But Carl, welcome.
Welcome, Sean. Or thanks for having me today, Sean. I appreciate it.
All right, so I want to start out with, what is your roots, Carl?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to do this as short as I can, but I'm originally from Quebec, Canada. So yeah, if you hear a little French accent, that's where I'm originally from. But yeah, so I grew up playing hockey. Obviously, if you're familiar with the sport, you get to play at a different level. I got lucky enough to go and play college hockey in Wisconsin at a Division III institution, and then from that standpoint, after that, I did my master's degree at the University of Utah, and this was the CMP in sports nutrition. And then after that, yeah, I went on and was able to work with different teams, different colleges, different sports. But yeah, so grew up in a small town, and then yeah, I never thought I'd be able to make it to the NHL as a player, but I made it as a staff, so that's a win in itself.
Do you think being able to speak French has been a huge benefit for you with a lot of athletes out coming from Canada down to the NHL?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, obviously with hockey, I think tons of kids coming out from Quebec to play the sport, whether it's yeah the collegiate level or at the pro level. Yeah, we have a couple of coaches here too that do speak French, so maybe that's why they picked me out of the people I interviewed for the job here. But yeah, like hockey obviously is a big one. Even when I was at Texas Tech, we had a couple of people, players and staff that spoke French from France. But yeah, I think it's tremendous. It's a tremendous asset if you can speak another language, just to be able to connect with players and staff for sure.
And what has it been like coming almost kind of full circle here, right? Canada is the cornerstone of hockey. You played hockey. You grew up in a country where that's, probably one of the most in sports there. And then now you're a dietitian for an
Yeah,
actual professional team.
yeah. I mean, there's not a day that that goes by that I don't pitch myself. So like, well, I'm pretty fortunate to be in that spot. And funny enough, my first year here, there's actually guys I played against growing up. So I was just joking with them. I was like, "Yeah, you're probably a little bit better than I was when we played against each other." But no, it's awesome. Obviously, it helps a ton with the credibility. Obviously, if you know your nutrition knowledge and you know your stuff, like obviously guys will respect that. Um, but on top of that, I think the main thing is like hockey is really different where like it's not like football where you go from high school to college to pro. There's tons of different paths that players can take to get here, and being familiar with what they're going through, whether it's like being hosted by billet family, being away from family, being on the road for long road trips, being able to know the difficulties of like sourcing food when they're away and all those challenges that comes with playing hockey at the lower level. Um, you know, I hear it quite a bit where it's like, hey, this guy gets it. And it's cool too because I've been used to different capacities here where like sometimes I am on the ice with the guys for testing or whatnot. So them seeing that I think helps a ton.
Yeah, I always talk about when you're in their environment or have the opportunity to be, whether it's practice, lifts, competition, locker room, you, there becomes a lot more trust in you because you're around. They know you're going to be there. You know they're going to be available, and you can answer obviously questions in those real life situations. Plus, having the background that you have and being where you're from, you have the relatability option there too. Someone that like me comes in, like let's say I have a football background, I'm coming into a hockey situation, like I don't know a lot about hockey, so probably take a lot more work on my end to try to build the credibility, relationship, and trust with those guys because I can't essentially speak their language. I mean, I would ask a lot of questions to try to figure it out, but to be able to connect as quickly, I'm sure as you were able to do, I'm sure was a huge benefit once you got there.
Yeah, for sure. Like the and just being around the guys and being in a locker room in the past with a sport that I played, yeah, like again, it's huge. When the coaches are going to come in for their speech, like all the little things that are like the intangibles of the sport that you kind of figure out fairly fast because I've been in it before. Yeah, that's been a huge asset before. Uh, yeah, and since I've been here, so no, it's like I said, it's a blessing for me. I'm able to do you know, again, full circle with the sports I grew up playing, and then you know, again, I watched the sport growing up. I'm still a fan, quote unquote. And it's the same thing with the coaches, right? Like when the coaches come to you and ask you for questions about nutrition or like an optimal body weight or body composition, um, it helps them to be like, yeah, like he knows the sport. It's not like it's a random dude just saying, oh yeah, like from the book, this should be what this player is looking like.
Mm.
And obviously, a lot of the things are performance driven. So I'm also able to assess, like, hey, this guy's playing to the highest of his abilities, or maybe he's not, you know, he's not really, like you said, if I'm in the weight room and he doesn't look great, then I can be on him, be like, hey, listen, dude, like, what's going on? Do you have breakfast this morning? Then it's a lot easier to start those conversations, right?
Yeah, so you mentioned, path to hockey. So is it kind of like almost seems like with NBA, like everyone in high school is trying to make it to the pros, and if they don't have a chance to make it to the pros, and okay, I guess I'll just go to college, and then maybe within a year or two, hopefully I'll get the chance and then to get that opportunity. Is that what it looks like? Or I mean, you said there's multiple ways too, and I know there's all these
Yeah,
different countries that obviously play hockey as well. And I'm sure the paths can differ from place to
yeah,
place.
yeah. It's similar and different in a way. And let's say we take basketball as a comparison because it's more of a little bit of your sphere, but basketball is only 2 rounds per draft. We got seven, so there's a little bit more players that are getting drafted. But it's no different than basketball. There's different leagues in the world, right? So for you guys this year, basketball, kids from France, right? Does that look different than a kid that's playing college in the U.S., right? So it's no different for hockey, and the guys are getting drafted fairly young. So normally a guy will get drafted at 18, and hockey is a young man, like it's a young guy's sport. So like a lot of the very good player can come in the league and do very very well right away if you know if their potential is that. Um, so I would say yeah, they can play juniors. That's the main one. Juniors is it's called the Canadian Hockey League, which will also have team and a couple of teams in the U.S. as well. But that's normally the path that most players will take, especially more of the North American guys. You also see more and more players go the NCAA route, so playing Division One hockey, the collegiate level, and then we got some guys that are from Europe that'll play pro leagues in Europe, whether it's Russia, Slovakia, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, like you name it, they'll have different leagues to play in. Um, but yeah, so all from a nutrition standpoint, all those leagues will have different challenges. So
Mhm.
like talking about connecting with somebody that speaks French, if a kid just speaks Russian, then obviously that makes your life a little bit easy, a little bit harder too, right? So those are all challenges as a practitioner. You're trying to work your way around and make sure that every guy can kind of know what to eat and when, and just do a good job of like being able to install some of those basic nutrition knowledge at the their earliest ages as soon as they come in your organization.
I'm sure dealing with cultural cuisines is probably a big challenge when you have all those people from different countries and they're used to eating in a certain environment, certain types of food. And now it's like you come to the US and it's like, how do I serve and provide them stuff that's similar, but then I have to obviously feed the entirety of the team? Is that something
Yeah,
we do on a regular basis?
yeah. No, honestly, it's I mean, everybody loves burgers and tacos, so sometimes that's the easiest way to go about it. But no, I'm very fortunate here. I got an unbelievable staff that I get to work with on a daily basis. We have a team chef here that's great, and him and he's an artist, so a lot of time I'll just let him do whatever he feels like it's the right move. But no, we do try to talk to the guys and say like a lot of Euros if you look at like Russia and Sweden, they'll like soups. So we have some time to try to make more soups. Obviously, here in Arizona, it's not super cold at any time of the year, but
Hey,
um,
gazpacho. We'll make them
yeah,
gazpacho.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's ways to be creative. Um, but yeah, no, it's cool to get some of these guys' feedback and like see the patterns and the guys that are from Sweden, like Norway, Switzerland, like all these guys will lead a little bit differently. Um, Most of the time they're not super picky either, so that helps us a ton. So whatever we put, um, normally they'll be fine with it. And to be quite frank, again, we're fortunate here that when guys come to us, a lot of time it's almost a better setting than what they've got in the past. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve on that nutrition side of things. So it's a blessing that we got support from management to be able to provide our guys with whatever they need.
Yeah, I can just see them being thankful, especially if you come from a country that doesn't have very much. And, you're just kind of getting from meal to meal. Then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, look at all these resources and the amount of food that I can have opportunities to get whenever I want, probably from day to day,
Yeah,
makes a huge difference. Um,
yeah, for sure.
could you talk about how is fueling a hockey player different from fueling maybe other major sports like NFL, MLB, MLS?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the physiology of the sport and the demands of the sport, I would always compare it a little bit to basketball or soccer. It's a high intensity sport, right? It's like short bursts of speeds, uh, spread with a couple of gliding sessions in the same quote unquote shift for guys. So if you look at how much they burn, like honestly, on average, most of these guys will burn over 1,000 calories per game and practice. So yeah, they burn a ton of calories, and that's without including their workouts. So some of our players that play a ton of minutes, obviously, like it's trying to get them as much calorie as we can, especially for us. 85% of our games are always 7 p.m. start. So that looks different too from a fueling standpoint, right? Especially when you're traveling on top of that. So sometimes you know some of these guys, especially the older guys, will get their pregame meal around 12:31 ish, and then
So
they'll
early.
snack a little bit before the game. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Honestly, that's a big difference between like our younger guys versus our vets. Vets tend to eat a lot more like beforehand and then snack a little bit closer to game time. But then after that, yeah, the game's normally done at 9:30. So by the time they're done with their post game lift and all that, like they don't eat until like 10:15. So it's a late night meal for them before you go to bed, and obviously in season you just try to optimize that. But from a demand perspective, yeah, these guys burn a ton of calories, and it's a 82 game season, so obviously it's a long season as well. Um, but yeah, so I wouldn't say there's too much difference from a fueling strategy if you were compared to something like soccer or lacrosse. Those are kind of like the two sports I kind of have in mind when I compare it to other sports. But yeah, that's just a little bit of an overview of fueling a hockey player. Yeah,
I would assume probably like football, like all that extra gear definitely plays a big factor probably into that. I mean,
yeah,
I think what people don't also understand, even though it's cold and you're on the ice, with all that extra, you're still sweating pretty profusely
yeah.
because
I honestly, it's all
you don't have a lot of
yeah,
surface area too. It looks like for heat to really
yeah,
extend your body because everything's covered.
yeah. Goalies, I've heard with goalies that lose anywhere between 10 to 12 pounds of practice or a game. Like you said, heavy gear. It's not as bad as what it used to be in the day. Now the equipment is fairly light, but yeah, there's a there's a high need from that perspective. And you know what? I always say sometimes working with sports in cold climates, it's almost worse because the athletes don't realize they actually need to like it's not hot outside, so they don't
Feel
realize
like
that they're sweating. Yeah,
yeah, you don't feel like they want.
um, yeah, exactly. So a lot of time I got to enforce the hydration during practices because sometimes guys are just like, man, whatever. So that would be one of the difference for sure compared to maybe a sport that's outdoor with being exposed to the sun or whatever.
Do you guys like football? I know football sometimes when it's cold out to do like hot chocolate or like bone broth. Since it's cold in your environment, is that something you guys do or tried or?
No, not really, because a lot of the rinks we'll play at most of the rinks are like it's surprisingly hot in a lot of like especially the bigger rinks. Like when we play at well it's Crypto Arena now, but in LA the rink is super hot. So sometimes a lot of guys the opposite way. They're just like, man, this is like
Get it off me.
this is what, yeah. They take their gear off in between periods and they just like walk around. They're just in their literally just their gear or underwear. But no, we won't really do that again because a lot of the things are climate control. Obviously, we'll do like the electrolytes and all that stuff, but we won't really do anything like hot per se. Sometimes our backup goalie will ask for tea. That would be maybe the only one that I can think of that it's like something hot. But besides that, yeah, we'll do like tons of fruits and snacks and just your regular stuff that you'll
Yeah.
do with other sports, really.
And one thing I picked up there, you guys mentioned that you guys lift after your games. With how many games you guys have, again, relating back to almost kind of like basketball again. And I know you also have a strength and conditioning background. Do you guys essentially have to like microdose your lifts where it's like a
Yeah.
30, 45-minute lift, just so that way you're getting the frequency and what the players need, but it's also not enough where it's going to crush them because obviously they got to turn around and let's say, I don't know, a few days or travel somewhere else and play another game. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great assessment. And like I said, I'm very fortunate here that my boss here, Devin McConnell, has been since day one, very big in integrating me in the whole S&C side of things and making sure that I know what's going on and being able to speak the language of everybody that's in the S&C department. But yeah, it's microdosing, lift right after games, just so that basically our high days are high and our low days are low from a player management standpoint, a player load standpoint. Um, we'll have quote unquote a blanket player load for traveling, things like that, so we can make sure that we still touch on the strength, the speed, flexibility, mobility, like all those three buckets throughout the season. Yeah, without crushing the guys, because yeah, especially it's a long season, it's demanding. Sometimes there's back to back, and there's travel, there's time change. Um, yeah, we had some pretty brutal trips this year, and yeah, you want a guys to lift, and you won't get the chance. I remember, like I think this year, the last 2 months, we didn't really have a day where we could actually just like lift. We barely practiced because we were like, it's always like game, and then we just elected with an off day to make sure that the guys were fresh for the game. But yeah, it's micro dosing lifts after, yeah, whether it's only 30 minutes, 2, 3 sets of 4, 5 exercises, just making sure the guys do the right thing and take care of the body and get their lift in to keep their strength up over the season.
Yeah, there's just so many stressors you can only really control. So
Yes.
many.
Yep.
At that point is like let's put as much effort into the recovery as we possibly can to
Yeah.
put you in a position to hopefully allow you to do what you need to do, night in, night out in the ring.
Yeah, for sure.
So kind of going back to athletes, we talked about a few different passions that you have, before we jumped out
Mm-hmm.
here. What do you do personally to create that relationship with your athletes that gets them to buy into the vision and process that you have from a nutrition standpoint?
Yeah. That's a great question, and I try to apply that anywhere I've been in the past. I always find that if you find what makes your athletes going, I try to really gear my first couple interaction with those players towards that. If I always go and just talk to them about nutrition right away, and I always, ask, hey, how much do you weigh? Like, have you been eating? Like, if I harp on that every single time, um, then they don't really see our relationship as, hey, this guy's there to help me out. It's more like, oh yeah, he's just here to do his job, and he just needs my weight, right? He just needs my body fat. He just needs me to get on the DEXA scan, even if I hate it, right? So being like, like I said, the guys are getting younger and I'm getting older, but like all our young guys like music. So like talking to them about music, hey, like talking to them about family, like, hey, is your brother playing hockey? Did your parents play hockey? They're like traveling. Okay, like where have you been this past year? Just a little conversation with that, I think goes a long way. And I try to implement that here with a lot of the guys. Like we have a lot of young kids coming in the last couple of weeks, and I bought a pickleball net, so I set up a pickleball court downstairs in our weight room, and like that's probably the best $100 I invested because like they're athletes and it just gets so competitive,
Yep.
and like it's awesome. Sometimes we'll have a couple of coaches like myself and our one of our like our assistant train coach jump in and play with the kids and just like get at like we get after it and like the kids like that, they enjoy that, and it makes a nutrition conversation a lot easier afterwards. Um, just because they know like, oh yeah, this dude's like he's part of my development. Like he's not just there to do his job, but like he really is looking out for me, right? Because like we're hoping that the guys we have in right now are going to be here for 5, 6, 7 years, right? So it's a process. Like today, they're all rooming together. I literally gave them a blender to take home because like I don't know what was in their kitchen. They're like, oh yeah, like you gave us all those recipes, but we don't have a blender. I was like, oh yeah, okay, well here's a blender, take it home, then you guys can do all your shakes at home. But yeah, if I didn't ask, like I would have known, right? So, um, yeah, those are just little examples of things I try. Like we toss the ball around. Like I brought a football for pregame at one time, and then like guys just started tossing the baseball and the football. Um, just little things like that. I think goes a long way to build that relationship, that trust with the players.
Yeah, those conversations allow you to then integrate some of the education that
Yes,
you want to get in. And nowadays, these guys just don't want to be talked at as soon as they get through the door. I think there's some of the
definitely.
approaches that you've mentioned are definitely, some of the things I've done, some of the things that people have been on this podcast are definitely seeing and starting to do as well. And you're not going to be able to get very far if they just see you as, you know, the lunch lady, the food,
Yes,
whatever names we
yes,
we get as dietitians across the years. Then that's all you're going to be titled as. And a lot of times,
yeah,
if it's an important person on the team, and that's what they've voiced to the rest of the players on the team,
yeah,
as you're that person, then it may make it that much harder for you to do your job or build relationships with
yeah,
everyone because not everyone's a leader. And sometimes when you have a lot of followers, it can make it challenging because they're just going to follow the one or two guys as lead and the majority
yeah.
you to doing.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I like that competitive approach. I do like a rock paper scissors competition. So everyone's
Yeah,
always
that's awesome.
they're not thinking about it. They're just come up to you and like fist bumping you, or like they're
Yeah,
they're gonna dap you, but like, oh, dap, that's paper. I'm gonna scissor you. Or if
yeah,
it's fist bump, I'm gonna paper your hand.
yeah,
So that little stuff like that becomes a competition. I'll do that with
yeah.
my coaches as well. I have one coach. We keep a tally board, and whoever gets the most wins at by Friday has to pick how many push-ups you have to do.
Nice.
Then they can pick when you do the push-ups.
That's awesome.
So, oh, you're on the court right now. Okay, well, next week you have to do 50 push-ups. Let's say Tuesday rolls around. Hey, Sean, I want you to do 25 push-ups right now.
Nice.
So it's a little bit, you really want to win because you don't know when they're going to make you do the push-ups. It could be
Yeah.
interesting. So it just kind of hypes it that much higher.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one.
You've also mentioned, helping your organization. That kind of resonates with me a little bit right now. My current position, kind of my thought process there is I got to be able to help the company and the business. I got to be able to help the coaches and our performance staff. I have to be able to then hopefully help those two parts of the business and then help the athletes at the end of the day. So how do you help your organization to be able to show more value in what you do?
Yeah. No, that's I think a very good question, and I think all of us in our fields try to make yourself as useful as you can, depending on where you fall. And again, I can't stress it enough. Like I'm very fortunate here that like I've been put in a situation to be, you know, asked to do a lot as well. And I'm the kind of person that like the more you ask me to do, the more I'll be willing to give back. Because if you just want me to do one little thing and put me in a box, I'm more likely just gonna like I'm not gonna be as active to seek out this opportunity to help out. Um, but from many examples I could use, like I said, I've been lucky enough to help out on the sports science side for different things, whether it's like when we do the on ice testing for a guy during def camp or any sorts of camp. I'm one of the couple of members in our staff that can actually skate decently. So that's very like I can demo stuff on the ice. The other day we had an in service where we used a 1080, and we used a 1080 on ice. Obviously, I was a guinea
Oh,
pig for that one. Yeah, yeah. So that's another whole part that we can chat about. But that was one of them that I've done in the past. The COVID year, my sports science director had to be held back from a trip, and he's normally the guy that does the catapult. So, long story short, I was the one that did the catapult for that trip. And to this day, it's funny because like we haven't really win a lot in the last couple of years, but this the trip that he didn't make that I did the catapult, we actually had a really good road trip. So I keep messing around with it. I was like, hey man, like if you want us to keep winning, like feel free to
let me go on the
make me do the
trip.
catapult. Yeah, let me do the catapult. Well, speaking of which, I do go on every trip. So I travel full time with the team. So in those instances where, like, again, if one of our staff member goes down for whatever reason, which is the case right now, we started lifting. We're a little bit short with like staff going on vacation or staff going to conferences or things like that. Like guys, our players know here that like I am also on the gym floor quite a bit. So if they need anything from the S&C side, they can like I'm on the floor most of the days here now in the summertime. In winter I could as well, but winter I just more like I'm just busier in season. But I can interchange in the weight room if needed. Um, yeah, just from the hiring perspective, I built an internship program here, connected in Arizona with NAU, ASU, all the other schools that have nutrition program to build an intern database. Um, Besides that, I help with the culinary side of things. We just hired a part-time sous chef not too long ago. So just growing the department itself, keeping track of all the ordering. Yeah, like you said, finances, projections, like how much are we going to spend this year? Should we go, third party catering or should we go in house on some of these things? Helping out, our president, his kids needed a meal plan. So guess who they went to? So there's a lot of situation that I feel like I've been put in a situation where I was able to assist and knowing the bare minimum to do a decent job at in an NHL organization, which is top top league in hockey. So, but I've always been somebody that loved learning, so being able to learn all those things and being willing to go to my staff and like, hey, if I'm ever in a situation that I have to do this, like, how would you want me to go about it? And that helps me to see from their lens and how they see my position as well. Lastly, I've been building a weigh-in app here through Microsoft Power Apps, so it's just putting my IT add on for that one. So yeah, like
Yeah,
broad spectrum of things.
it seems definitely just amongst the amount of years and experience that you have, you've just developed a lot of these skills and tools that's made you very
Yes.
diverse, and you're able to be really flexible in whatever moment it is, and having past experiences. Hey, I can just jump in and help. I think a
Yep.
question I have there though is, when is giving too much, and then also like not giving so much where then, you know, what am I trying to say? Obviously, I don't want to say stay in your lane, but
Yeah.
a lot of dietitians will give too much and then they kind of get burnt out from giving too much to too many people. So what is that fine
Yeah.
line for you, or how do you decide when to, hey, I'm going to help and
Yeah.
provide, help to these staff and support for these staff. But then the other part of it, like I'm going to be able to provide only this much before I'm going to need to hire another dietitian, a fellow, a
Yeah.
GA, whatever that is.
Yeah. And that's a great question because I used to be somebody that's like, nope, no, like I need to do this myself. I need to get this, like, I need to do all that and I'll figure it out. I'll figure the rest later. But what I've found is like, you know, I'm really lucky that again, I was able to get a couple of interns uh, last fall, and then I got some right now, and some are going to continue in the spring as well, and so on and so on. So I try to give them whoever comes in as an intern. I try to give them a really good experience, so that way they stay with us and they find a way to learn. Because what I'm trying to do now is anything that I feel that they're comfortable enough and they're knowledgeable enough to do, I kind of give that to them. I'm trying to put, even though I'm trying to work on the systems on a daily basis, I'm still trying to oversee and build that whole umbrella of, performance nutrition as well, right?
Mhm.
So, more and more, like if I receive orders, I used to do it all by myself. Like, nope, you guys got this. Like, I'm a lot better at
Delegating.
being able to delegating. Yeah, be able to delegate to people, and that allows me to be like, okay, this is the level of service we're at right now. This is the bare minimum we'll have to do moving forward. But if I keep the same staff on hand, like we should be able to manage moving forward, right? It's no different. And sometimes my chef is slammed. Like a couple times, I've helped them out in the kitchen, right? It's just like, all right, like tell me what to do. Like I'm here to assist. Um, so it's just trying to find those areas where like, okay, this is just really like, okay, this is a priority. Let's
Mhm.
focus on that, and then just like the rest is kind of like we'll put that aside and take care of that later. So, yeah, there is a fine line of like, yeah, how much you should give. But I think as an organization, you just need to figure out what should be prioritized, whether it's the lift, whether it's stuck in the fridges, whether it's like working on meals on the roads or whatever, like hey, emergency, need to do a projection for finance and see how much we're going to spend this year. So it's just trying to figure out the best way to go about it. But I'm trying to share my knowledge as much as I can to my interns. So if there's anything that I'm like, oh yeah, like this could be handled by somebody else, and I'm just trying to have them do that.
Do you try to give them a lot of the experiences that you deal with as a director? Just because I feel like, and you could probably attest to some of my internships, your internships. A lot of times you're just doing food service, and I think a lot
Yeah,
of situations where you start going up through those roles, and you don't have an idea of how to budget, how to communicate with an athletic director, or a CFO or a owner or a
yeah,
manager, whatever those positions are. A lot of times you I mean, I've had to fall back and ask other people, like, how do I approach this situation, just because I've never been in it
yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't know what to do. So how do you approach that?
Oh yeah, I'm very real with them, and I throw them in the fire every single day. Even today, you know, um, they were in the weight room. They were in the weight room with me today and yesterday. So I'm like, all right, this is how you do. So we use GymAware to
Mhm.
calculate bar speed.
We do too.
So like, hey, this is how you do it. So like, I had one of my interns is actually more of an exercise science background. The other one, she's just like a nutrition background. So I was like, I don't really care whether or not like you have the previous knowledge for this. You just need to be able to run it. Then I can explain to you later on what is the meaning behind it. And you know what's funny is like today we went and talked about the different components of an exercise, whether it's an eccentric phase, concentric, isometric. So like it kind of all made sense to them today, and I want them to get exposed to that as much as they can, because yeah, there's some situations in the past that I'm like, I wish I would have been through that in the times I was an intern, but I never really got exposed to it. So I'm trying as much as I can to like have them present in front of coaches and players. Have them being in the weight room, have them receive orders, go in the grocery store and like do all the groceries and buy their own, and like figuring out where to go whenever they bring it back. If something is short on a order, how did they go about it? So yeah, I try to do my best to like expose them to as much as you can, because my goal is for them to leave here and being able to literally like go somewhere and just crush it. If they go somewhere and they suck, it's like that looks bad on me. So I'm just trying my
Exactly.
best to equip them as much as they can, so wherever they go, they feel comfortable doing just that, and being able to run. I always say you should be able to run the department even if I wasn't here. So if one day I don't make it in, you should know exactly how to go about the day.
Yeah, they're a branch of you once they leave that building.
Yeah, whether that's good or bad. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the last thing you want is, you have a bunch of interns that go out and like they don't meet, they're not up to snuff. So that kind of gives yourself
yeah,
the head a little bit more motivation to make sure they're fully prepared, and you
oh
know
yeah, for sure.
wherever they go, like you said, they're going to crush it.
Yeah,
Uh, last question I have before we kind of wrap up here. I don't see a lot of RDs in the NHL space, so how do we work on getting more into hockey, or do you guys have an NHL RD group that's progressing and working on trying to get more dietitians into the space to help the players?
yeah, that's an excellent point. Actually, the it's something we've been working on. The NHL yearly conference is actually this weekend, and it's in Arizona this year. Um, but yeah, we're working with PowerPoint here, but um, it is very interesting. NHL is typically behind everything always. It's
Even
very
M
old school.
even MLB.
Oh man, even MLB is a lot better, especially now with like sports psychology and
Yeah.
like mental performance. Like we're light years behind on this one over here. But honestly, I think it's a combination of a lot of different factors. But just to give you a little bit of background, I feel like in the NHL, a lot of the time, they'll have the strength coaches just handle the nutrition. Um, Normally, S&C will do more of the supplementation and the weigh-ins and all that stuff, body composition. Operations will do meals on the road and all that. And I think it falls back on the NHLRDs that are already there to do a good job and like advocating for the profession, which is something we're going to do this weekend. Just saying like, hey, we're here, we're part of this, we're trying to grow the field, we're trying to grow the presence in the NHL. Here's what we can do for our organization. So yeah, and I think that's important as an RD to be able to advocate for what you do and to grow the profession. So that's one area that I think that needs to be done. But the second one is it's a little bit of what I'm doing right now with like because you know how it is in the sport world. Sometimes the hiring is very under the radar. It's very like who you know kind of thing. And I've been lucky where I do think that I was fit for this position. Like if I I checked a lot of boxes. I was also lucky in a way that like I did have connections where like, oh yeah, this dude played blah blah. Like, hey, yeah, I worked with him before. And my mentor, Lisa McDowell, one of my mentor, she's been working for the Red Wings since 2010. So she's one of the oldest tenure RD, but she's a good example of somebody I've seen the growth literally over maybe to like 3 to 4 years where now we have more full-time RDs for teams. They're not splitting time between. We still have tons of RDs that are splitting time between NHL and NBA. We had a few of those. Some of them are part-time. Some of them are unpaid. Like it's unbelievable the spectrum that you have from how the RDs are being used in the NHL. But yeah, so one side is the like advocacy, but the other side is like okay, having interns here that have hockey experience, like that's huge because hockey's not super popular at the collegiate level. It's not
Mhm.
one of those sports that you can like really easily get experience, and it's very much so a niche. So for me, that was another thing too that was important to me is like bringing those interns in, getting them exposed to the sport. Like today, we talked like the draft's about to happen, so we talked a ton about the draft, and I made them do some data inputting for me was just like, yeah, like the position of the player, their birth year, their height. We're gonna get their weight when they come here, but like just getting to know a little bit about how everything works, that
Mhm.
goes a long way. And again, me being comfortable saying to if I know a team's gonna hire, I can be like, oh yeah, like this person's about to graduate, or like, hey, they might be like a year remote, but like once they're done, like they'd be a very good candidate, or like this person that hockey experience in the past, like be able to give the knowledge and give back to the it could be older RDs too. Like anybody that's willing to put themselves in a situation where they want to know more about the sport, then yes, it's huge. Like don't close the doors. Like as RDs, we should be able to open them
Mhm.
and being willing to let people that are qualified in, so the field grows a little bit more.
Fantastic. Well, Zoom is about to cut me off, and I would ask you 1,000 more questions. 'Cause
That's all good.
that was a great ending to the podcast, but for having you on. I'm going to put on his contact information if you want to get a hold of him, email or his Instagram. But again, Carl, really appreciate you. I think this will be a good insight to people that are interested in the hockey realm that want to get into nutrition.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you guys need anything from me. So appreciate you.